Well, for more on this story and others making headlines, we're now joined by former Australian diplomat Ian Kemish, who's in Brisbane for us. Very good morning to you, Ian.
Good morning.
Good morning, Joe. Good morning, Fauziah.
We're going to kick off with this story from The Guardian, and there has been, it's quite frightening actually, these statistics, a number of attacks on politicians and parties in Germany, and these attacks have doubled since 2019. Ian, I wonder if this has or is parallel to the fact that the far-right parties are now rising in popularity in Europe.
Look, I think it is, and it's really important to make that very point you've just made, that this is Europe-wide, not just Germany. Where these most recent attacks have taken place were in Dresden, which is in eastern Germany, homeland, if you like, for the AfD, the Alternative for Deutschland party, which is the right-wing party that, as you say, is doing quite well across the country these days. The thing about Germany is that any report on political violence in that country inevitably recalls the period of the Third Reich, the period of Nazi rule. And the Germans really have surpassed themselves in recent times. I know this as a former Australian ambassador to Germany, in seeking to establish a very new kind of political culture which turns its back fundamentally on that past. The resurgence of the right in Germany is inevitably seen in that light. The past is always held against Germany in that sense. But it's true also in France, it's true elsewhere in Europe that the right wing is resurging and there is an undercurrent of political violence, and it reflects a problem with social cohesion, which perhaps even we in Australia have seen some signs of in recent times.
In the second article you're speaking to us about is from the BBC, and it's the council elections across England, which we've been covering already this morning as well. This is being seen as a big test of public opinion ahead of the general election as well.
Yeah, that's right. The general election's due, as you know, before the end of this year. And this particular article from the BBC seeks to sort of step back and understand exactly what's happened in those local elections that took place on Thursday. Clearly, Labor has done well across the country, and it's further confirmation, if any was needed, that the Conservative Party are facing a very serious uphill battle when it comes to the general election. Rishi Sunak, the leader of the Conservatives, is understood to have survived well enough as parliamentary leader. However, he's been able to point to some places where the party has done less poorly than might have been expected. Nonetheless, Sadiq Khan has just won an historic third term as Mayor of London for Labor. Labor has won the West Midlands around Birmingham, didn't quite expect to, but they're delighted with that. And there's been a surge of support back to Labor in the north as well. So it doesn't look good for the Conservatives. On the other hand, some of the smaller independent parties have also done quite well at the expense of the Tories. And that includes Reform UK, which is the inheritor of those previous pro-Brexit parties like UKIP. They appear to have won a couple of councils as well. But another quite interesting thing here is that moving against the trend has been the level of support of Muslim voters for Labor. The polling suggests that in constituencies where voters identify as Muslim, Labor's vote has been down reasonably substantially, and that reflects a real sense of discontent with the UK's stance on the Israel-Gaza conflict. So a mixed story, but overall very, very positive for Labor.
Yeah. Ian, across the pond, of course, the US elections are taking place in November this year. We're still some months away, but already the think pieces are starting to come out about a possible Trump 2.0. And the Financial Times says that, well, Europe should brace itself for a second Trump term.
Yes, it's quite compelling reading, this article. It's based on an interview that Trump himself did with Time magazine a little bit earlier in the week. And inevitably, a lot of the initial headlines around that interview were based on how former President Trump spoke about his plans for the United States itself. His talk of a crackdown on illegals, monitoring women's pregnancies, these sorts of things inevitably were big news. But this article says, well, what about for Europe? There was a very strong anti-European sense in this interview and in these remarks by the former president. He spoke about NATO having to become essentially a fee-paying club where if a nation didn't contribute at least 2% of their GDP to their own defence, then America would not feel in any way compelled under his presidency to come to that nation's defence. He spoke quite bitterly about the state of EU-US trade relations. And the article explores, well, what can Europe do about this? And the options range from hoping he won't win to seeking to court him. But it's a pretty downbeat article. It actually concludes that a Trump presidency could spell the end of the West as a unifying strategic concept in the globe, be very good for Putin, and of course very bad for Ukraine.
Well, we have a few more months to prepare for all of that. Ian, great to have you on the show. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. Ian Kemish there.
Thank you.